I always wanted to be a bobby. I wanted to be a policeman in England. That was my goal as a kid. I failed the entrance exam, so I joined the Marines. And the commando training, 7 months, not 7 weeks. Basic training, 7 months. It was rough. Then over the years, I became a drill instructor. So then I saw what they did to me, I did to them. It was extraordinary. I love to tell people I used to make grown men cry. And as a priest, I still make them cry, in various different ways. But having seen man's inhumanity, having seen combat, having seen the rawness of death in combat, and then witnessing my sister being healed. She was sick for 3 years. She was a ballet dancer with the Royal Ballet in London. We used to see her on the stage, beautiful settings, doing 32 pirouettes or whatever they do. I've forgotten now. But watching the beauty of that, and then seeing her in bed, shaking, trembling, and every now and again everything would reverse to the point where the prognosis or the diagnosis was death by breaking her own neck. A man called Canon Jim Glennon prayed for Julie, laid hands on her, and she was cured, which is an absolute miracle. Cured of dystonia, a disease that generally is not cured, very similar to Parkinson's disease. That got my attention. And I think in ministry, when God gets our attention and we observe that and acknowledge that attention, something happens. And a year later, it was exactly a year after my sister's healing, which was now 29 years ago. So 28 years ago for me, I was running a little picture frame business, doing really well picture framing. It was very successful. We had 2 locations, 8 employees. It was really thriving. And it was very simple, apart from cutting yourself a lot. I was bandages on my hands all the time. But a woman once walked into my store. She looked green. She looked very sick. And I said, "Are you okay?" She said, "I've got a really bad headache." And I'm standing in front of her watching my hands do this. It was not a conscious effort. I watched my hands go onto her head. Not appropriate for a man to do, not appropriate for anybody to do, but it was as if somebody grabbed my wrist, plonk, and she looked me right in the eyes and said, "What did you do? The pain is gone." And that terrified me because I knew I hadn't done anything, but I knew God had. And for me, that was the raw foundation of this whole thing, of watching her look on her face. She was cured instantly. The pain went. And I mean, she was green. She looked like she was going to throw up. She looked really sick. And she flushed, the color came back, and she was cured, right there and then. And I tell you what, I was frightened. I really was. I freaked out. I actually went home to surprise my parents for a wedding anniversary. And after the anniversary and the surprise, which was great fun, I was having lunch with my dad. We got chatting, and a little later my mum came in with dinner. And both my dad and I said, "What are you doing?" "We've just had lunch." And he said, "No, it's 6 o'clock. We spoke all afternoon about healing, about God, about Jesus." He didn't know. He was in the healing ministry and I didn't know it. He didn't tell me because I was a Marine and thought I wouldn't acknowledge it or understand it. And we got into such a depth of communication and finding out what he did. I knew he was a priest, obviously he wore a collar, but I didn't know that he was involved in the healing ministry too, and had been for years. He had had an experience with a bad back where he had woken up and the Lord healed his back during the night. And he found out later that his parish priest happened to be up at the same time praying for him, and he was healed. So I didn't know that. So I went to him just saying, "Dad, this has happened, but this woman in my frame shop," and discovered that he'd been doing it for years. Didn't know it because he was afraid, being a Marine, that I wouldn't, receive that or understand it. And by golly, I was thirsty. So, I mean, that whole afternoon went by so quickly. So my mum comes in with this food, dinner. We just had lunch. "What are you doing?" It's 6 o'clock at night. It was crazy. And my father, I heard stories of him and things he had done, or God had done through him, and it was fascinating. So that was sort of a reinforcement. Again, God got my attention.